Welcome to MiceTech Talk with the technical information scientists at the Jackson Laboratory. My name is Dr. Dolores, and my job as a technical information scientist is to serve the research community by answering all mouse-related questions.
And I am Dr. Shintong. MiceTech Talk is a way for us to connect with the research community and answer some of the most related questions live.
So hopefully you're ready because it's time for MiceTech Talk. So today, let's talk cytokine release syndrome basics. We have prepared a few discussion topics for you watching live. And remember, you can use the comment section of the video to tell us where you're viewing from and any CRS-related questions you may have. We'll try to answer those today. So let's start by discussing what is cytokine release syndrome. This is a life-threatening systemic inflammatory syndrome involving elevated levels of circulating cytokines and immune cell hyperactivation that can be triggered by various conditions, as seen in many susceptible patients with COVID-19, for example.
Yeah, indeed, it is really life-threatening. So, Doris, what are the symptoms of the cytokine release syndrome?
There's a wide range of symptoms that can be observed. Nearly all patients have fever, and they may also have fatigue, anorexia, headache, rash, diarrhea, pain in the joints and muscles, and even neuropsychiatric findings. So although these drivers of CRS may differ, late clinical manifestations of cytokine storm often overlap, and this presents with elevations in serum inflammatory cytokine levels, for example, interferon gamma, IL-6, IL-10, soluble IL-2 receptor alpha, which is a marker of T-cell activations. Patients also have acute systemic inflammatory symptoms and secondary organ dysfunction, which is very dangerous. Often kidneys, liver, or lungs get hit, and they can get multi-organ failure if not treated properly. So if you look into lab work, you can see that cytokine storm have variable and influenced by different causes. For example, highly elevated IL-6 is found in CAR T cell therapy-induced cytokine storm, which brings us to the next question, which is, what are the causes that trigger cytokine release syndrome? Shinton, can you comment on that?
Of course. So as you already mentioned the cytokine release syndrome has been found in the COVID patients, as well as in the patients may have been treated with a CAR T therapy. So the CRS can be triggered by many causes, and I do not think that we have a fully understand of its molecular mechanism of each different causes. So, for example, the cytokine storm can be observed with the patients that has been treated with immunotherapies, such as a CAR T therapy and T-cell engaging immunotherapy, especially the bispecific antibodies. And for this type of cytokine release syndrome, we observe activated T cells, which initiate the cytokine storm, and macrophage activations, and some other immune cells also propagate the induced cytokine storm. And meanwhile, for those patients that has been treated, even the tumor lysis itself most likely also contributes to the cytokine storm through the induction of pyrostosis in the targeted cells. And the cytokine storm was also reported in the patients with COVID-19 or SARS virus infections, and it often associated with very poor outcomes. Of course, you may still observe an elevated systemic cytokine level increase, activated immune cells, tissue damage, and again, as I mentioned, they were found to be predict very worsening outcomes in the COVID-19. Cytokine storm can also be resulting from some natural occurring microbial infections and autoimmune neoplastic or idiopathic causes. So a short summary is that the cytokine release syndrome can be caused by many different factors. And what is most important is that we need to identify the effective treatment for the cytokine release syndrome. So Dolores, can you comment on what are the potential treatments we have right now for the cytokine release syndrome?
Right, that's a question in everybody's minds. So what's it really important is a timely and effective treatment if you see CRS, as the symptoms can rapidly worsen and become very severe. So doctors will use medications to reduce inflammation safely in people presenting with CRS. Some drugs will target specific cytokines. For example, we have Actemra and Sylvant that are compounds that reduce the action of IL-6 specifically. You have other drugs that can reduce the levels of other cytokines. And then you have another option, which is using glucocorticoids, for example, to reduce inflammation without targeting a specific cytokine. So depending on the severity of CRS, other treatments may be necessary in patients to support their organs and prevent further damage. So Shinton, can you go over which platforms are being used for CRS research at the Jackson Laboratory?
Yes, of course. As we already mentioned, there are maybe many causes of the CRS, and they may be caused by different molecular mechanisms. Definitely, there's urgent need. You may want to have a platforms to testing the cytokine release syndrome, to testing a potential therapies that can mitigate the cytokine release syndrome. And what at the Jackson Laboratory right now, we are offering a very rapid and quite accurate in vivo platforms for you to evaluate the cytokine release syndrome caused by the immunotherapy, and which also allows you to test the potential therapy which could potentially mitigate the cytokine release syndrome. And what we have provide right now is the human peripheral blood mononuclear cell humanized NSG or NSG SGM3 mice. So for these humanized mice, they have a human immune cells such as the T cells, a minimum of the B cells, some NK cells, and myeloid cell responses. And once you challenge this humanized mice with a positive control, we're using OKT3, which is an immunosuppressant, and it will be able to detect the increased level of cytokines, as well as and also the release of these human cytokines correlates with the increased dose of the OKT3, the immunosuppressants. And we have been done a lot of experiments and found that this platform will allow you to evaluate your relative cytokine levels from your immunomodulatory therapies and also accessing your anti-inflammatory therapies. So as I mentioned, we have done a lot of validation experiment and characterization experiments in our facility. We have also have a lot of data with using the different doses of treatment and using the different mouse models comparing the NSG versus the NSG SGM3 mice. And it's all available from our webinar presentations, and feel free to contact us if you want to know more detailed information regarding this platform.
Excellent. Thank you for summarizing that. I'm going to take a little pause and acknowledge our visitors. We have Samuel interested in our talk. We have also Janine that is asking a question. Is it known what causes some COVID-19 patients to have severe CRS versus people with no CRS? And you know, this is still something that is under investigation as far as what the triggers are. But what we know so far is that with the same insult, with the same infection, same strain, you can have people respond very mildly to the virus and don't even get sick. And then you have people that get sick and their immune system can mount a response to get rid of the viral load. And then you have people where they get really sick, but the worst part is that it must be a genetic component for sure, that the immune system overreacts, and that's what really ends up complicating things very, very, you know, in a bad way.
Yeah, short answer is we may not know that fully understand what's molecular mechanism beyond that. Why some people getting CRS and some did not, and it is something that worth looking into or investigate into that to find out more detailed mechanism beyond that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we could definitely do another episode to expand on more details on the platforms that we have to evaluate more accurately the safety and the toxicity of immunomodulatory drugs. And So that is something that we have Brian Soper that volunteered to do an episode later on, probably in sometime in June. We'll keep you posted. So let me see. We have another question that I wanted to take a look from Kia. What are the best practices or suggested methods to monitor CRS symptom severity in mice? I would think that one of the approaches would be to look for serum levels of interleukins. That would be one, and then doing the sort of the health monitoring. See if they have fever. See if they, the symptoms of COVID in mice have been very well described. You can go back to our archives of MTT. We have described the symptoms in mice, so you would be monitoring for the clinical symptoms, and I think more specifically to the immune system response, looking at IL-6, IL-10, and other cytokines that are super elevated in the presence of cytokine storm. Otherwise, it's just a normal reaction to an infection.
Yep.
All right. So let me see. I think this is all the time. Let's see. There's one more question here from Caitlin. Are there any known sex differences in CRS response in either human or mice? Do you have any thoughts on that,
from all the literature publications I have read, I don't think any of them mentioned about sex difference in the CRS response in human or mice. Do you have anything to add on to that?
No, not really. I think that has not been studied enough. I agree with you, Xintong. The reviews that I read in preparation for this episode and papers that I've seen, I haven't seen any link to that. But I mean, a lot of women are more prone to autoimmune diseases, so it wouldn't be as surprising to me if something like that were to be discovered in the near future. But excellent questions. I love them. So, well, this is all the time that we have for questions this week. If we didn't get to answer your question, please send it to micetech@jax.org. That's our email, and we will answer that for you. We do have linked a few resources in this video description. Dr. Xintong, can you quickly comment on the links that we have?
Sure. I see we have put like two of the super links here in the video description. The first one contains a brief summary of our PBMC humanized platform for cytokine release syndrome, and it contains some video resources from the bottom of the for the overviews, case studies, and publications of this model. And the second one is also a blog that characterizing our new PBMC humanized mouse and the CRS platform as well.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Before we leave, our next MiceTech Talk is called Let's Talk Mouse ID Tags. That's going to happen next Tuesday, March the 30th, and we look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn and YouTube. This is Dr. Dolores saying stay healthy, stay safe, and stay excited about your research. See you next time.
See you next time.